This is not the man that China wanted to see elected president of Taiwan. In an election they framed as a choice between war and peace, Taiwan voted for defiance.
We are telling the international community that between democracy and authoritarianism, we will stand on the side of democracy.
This is the historic third victory of Taiwan's Democratic Progressive Party, who covet closer relations with the US and desire full independence from China. When Beijing had warned those heading to the ballot box to vote carefully, this is not what they wanted.
I'm very calm because Taiwan has been a democratic place for many years. It is a diverse society that respects different voices.
I'm more nervous in this election because it is a choice between whether we want to be closer to China or to the US. At the end, it's a democratic decision of the people.
Taiwan has only had full elections since the year 2000, a democracy in Gen Z, with all the giddiness of youth.
Taiwanese elections are really exciting, they're noisy, there's a lot of public campaigning on the streets, and there's a lot of public participation. My parents both grew up under martial law, and to go vote with them today, the three of us, and to be able to cast our votes in a democratic Taiwan is something that I think is incredibly moving.
This is what Taiwan's voters fear losing if China completes its unfinished civil war. When Mao rose to power, the nationalist Chinese government fled to Taiwan, and ever since has been looking over its shoulder. Today, Taiwan is increasingly more culturally distinct from mainland China and was the first country in Asia to legalize gay marriage. Yet Beijing has promised to unify Taiwan with mainland China. Does this election now increase the likelihood of conflict with China?
It always feels like there's a lot on the line, and that's because of Taiwan's unique and precarious situation in the international system, where it operates like a de facto independent country, but it receives very little formal diplomatic support. However, Taiwan alone cannot resolve its geopolitical dilemmas, because this is a dilemma that's been created by Chinese claims over Taiwan, Chinese ideology towards Taiwan.
Taiwan has been a fault line between the US and China. The US have been an ally of Taiwan, but President Biden has avoided support for independence, as conflict would have major regional and international consequences. Taiwan produces the majority of the silicone chips essential to new computers and the global economy. It is Taiwan's economy that has been a silent backdrop behind the election. The price of staple goods has risen and wages have declined. Taiwan's cost of living has cost the DPP votes. The party may have won the presidency, but it has now lost control of parliament.
I'm somewhat concerned about the fact that none of the three parties have achieved a majority in parliament, but I think this is another choice made by the Taiwanese people.
Taiwan's new president is facing constraints and under pressure to be cautious. Last year, China increased its military drills in Taiwan's territory, and the election of a man they have called a separatist is unlikely to improve relations. And with no dialogue with Taiwan's governing party since 2016, the question is what's next for China's 74-year standoff with the island it considers a Chinese region in rebellion.
Well, a little earlier, I spoke to Yun Sun, director of the China program at the Washington, D.C. international think tank, the Stimson Center. I began by asking her what she thought of William Lai's victory speech.
The whole focus on Taiwan, a lot is about the relationship with China and whether Taiwan is justifiably having a rightful place in the world, on the world stage. In terms of the democracy, I think the ruling party as well as the opposition political parties have been emphasizing that this is the exercise of the will of the Taiwanese people. It's not up for China to decide the island's future. It's not up to the United States to decide the island's future. It's about the 23 million voters in Taiwan and where they want the island to go.
But this is going to be a result that isn't going to go down well in Beijing, isn't it? It's going to be not necessarily Beijing's preferred candidate, is it?
Oh, he's definitely not Beijing's preferred candidate. And we knew that from a long time ago that he is already presumed guilty in Beijing's view, because the Chinese believe no matter what he says, he is going to be pursuing a platform for Taiwan independence regardless. So that is true. So he is not Beijing's preferred candidate. But also saying that China has been preparing for this result since much earlier on, since at least throughout the year of 2023. I did not come across any Chinese policy experts or interlocutor who believed that KMT had a good chance to win this election.
Will Beijing be seeing right now as a really good time, do you think, to kind of up military action? Because the world's attention is just so diverted in different areas at the moment.
I think it depends on what those military actions will be targeting. That if it's targeting an invasion of Taiwan, no, I don't think that is China's priority at this time. But if it is targeting deterring the DPP candidate, or not the DPP president-elect, deterring him from making statements or crossing the red lines in China's view, I think that is very likely.
He won 40% of the vote, but that's kind of 60% of the electorate who don't necessarily want him in power or don't necessarily see his viewpoint. Does that mean that he'll have to be more moderate in how he goes ahead and how he governs Taiwan?
I think that is very likely, because you're right. We are looking at 60% of the voters did not vote for him. And in fact, if the two opposition parties could have established a coalition, they could have won this election. So DPP certainly faces a lot of headwind in terms of the domestic disapproval and the unpopularity of their policy, especially the domestic policies in the past 8 years. But those will be primarily domestic issues. On the issue of cross-strait relations, I think people are generally pleased with the status quo. So if he is keen on maintaining the status quo, I think he will be having the support of the Taiwanese people.
Yun-sun, thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Voters in Taiwan shrugged off warnings from China and re-elected the ruling party for a third consecutive presidential term. It's a vote that could have major consequences for U.S. relations with China. CNN's Will Ripley has more.
History on the streets of the Taiwanese capital tonight. Thousands of people are out here listening to the first words of their new president-elect, Lai Ching-te, and their vice president-elect, Xiaobi-Kim. This is their first press conference after confirming that they have accepted their election win. The two opposition parties, the parties that were considered friendlier to China, both conceded earlier in the evening on Saturday. The election results came through relatively quickly, just a few hours after the polls closed here in Taiwan. This island democracy has a reputation for being very efficient when it comes to tallying the election results, partially because there are just under 24 million people living here and nobody can vote in absentee ballots. So everybody who cast their ballots, the millions of Taiwanese who voted, actually had to do so in person in their hometowns. But a lot of people turned out. There were just under 2,000 polling sites here in Taipei alone, and there were lines at a lot of them throughout the day because of what is at stake in this election. China had told the Taiwanese people, warning them in the run-up to this election, that this was a choice between peace and war, prosperity and decline, implying that the Democratic Progressive Party, which is openly loathed by Beijing's communist leaders, is the wrong choice in China's view to lead Taiwan for the next 4 years. And they've been making their point not only with bellicose statements, but also with actions, including just in recent days sending spy balloons over Taiwan, unveiling imagery of their third most advanced aircraft carrier, one of the most advanced in the world, that experts say, once it completes sea trials, would play a vital role in any potential invasion of Taiwan, which China has never ruled out, as they say that they will eventually reabsorb this island as part of their territory, even though the communist rulers in Beijing have never actually controlled it. And of course, there's always the looming threat. But people here, the supporters of the Democratic Progressive Party, say that's exactly why they've decided to give the DPP 4 more years in Taiwan, because they believe that the party's strategy of a close alignment with the United States, prioritizing military, diplomatic diplomatic and economic ties with the U.S. Is the way to protect Taiwan from a Chinese attack, as opposed to the opposition's argument that, in fact, mending fences with China, rebuilding that relationship, and recalibrating the U.S. relationship would have been the way to dial down the temperature and avoid a cross-strait conflict. But Taiwan has made its decision, a third historic consecutive presidential term for the ruling party, the DPP.
Will Ripley, thank you so much. And just a short time ago, China responded to the election results. The foreign ministry saying the election does not change their view that Taiwan is part of China. Let's get more now on this historic election. Bonnie Glaser is the director of the Asia program at the German Marshall Fund. So great to see you. So with China's response there, I mean, are they signposting something about what they believe should be next?
I thought Beijing's response was relatively moderate. They reiterated that unification is inevitable, but also said that they look forward to working with some political parties in Taiwan. Of course, that means probably every political party other than the winning Democratic Progressive Party. But there were really no new threats in the statement that was issued by the Taiwan Affairs Office in Beijing. It's probably a placeholder, so we'll have to see what steps they take in the weeks and months to come.
And the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, says he's looking forward to working with Dr. Lai Ching-te, after Lai won the presidential election. What does that say, or how is that received if you are China?
I think that China expects nothing less than that the United States will continue to strengthen ties with Taiwan. I would also note that President Biden had a statement as well. And what he said was a reaffirmation of U.S. policy that the United States does not support Taiwan independence. And that's a message that China has heard before, doesn't necessarily think that it is credible, but it's important for them to hear. And I think that it does, to some extent, reduce the possibility that they will react very strongly in the near term. And I think it was intended to reassure.
In what way might it be an obstacle between the U.S. and China as it tries to, resume operations and relations?
I think that Taiwan, of course, has long been a issue in the U.S.-China relationship where we've had very sharp differences. And the two presidents, Xi Jinping and President Biden, speak very directly to each other about Taiwan. And they met in November at the Woodside Summit. And my understanding is that they had a very candid exchange. I believe that Xi Jinping wants to preserve the fragile stability that has been achieved in the U.S.-China relationship. He is probably focused on the economic headwinds and corruption in the PLA. I just don't think he wants a conflict with Taiwan at this point. And he doesn't really want to upset the improving relationship with the United States, even though he probably has low expectations.
Do you feel like Taiwanese feel more emboldened now? We heard our Will Ripley there saying that, voters say that this was a choice of peace over war. And now that this is a historic third consecutive win, what does that say for Taiwan's posture?
I don't think that the new president, Lai Ching-te, and his vice president-elect, of course, Bi-khim Hsiao, who's been the representative from Taiwan in the United States for several years, I don't think that they are going to be emboldened to pursue independence. We have really heard both of them reaffirm that they will continue the policies of the current president, Tsai Ing-wen, that is preserving the cross-strait status quo. And I think they both realize that they only won 40% of the vote. That means that 60% of the people in Taiwan voted for one of the other candidates. The DPP ruling party also lost its majority in the legislature. And so it will be more difficult to pass laws going forward as a result. And so this is going to be, I think, a challenge for the DPP, but I think their priority will be continuing to strengthen ties with the United States, with the rest of the world. And I don't think they want to rock the boat in relations with Beijing.
All right, Bonnie Glaser, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.